I'm James Gardner, host of Your History, Your Story, a podcast for everybody who loves stories about interesting people and events told by those who uncovered them from within their own family trees. This, we hope, will inspire you to discover and celebrate your history and your story. In this episode of Your History, Your Story, we'll be speaking with Parkinson's disease advocate and author, Dr. George Ackerman. George and his family started the website Together for Sharon to honor his mother's memory and to share the message of Parkinson's awareness and hope for a cure. George's mother, Sharon, passed away at age 69 on January 1st, 2020, after bravely battling Parkinson's for over 15 years. For some of those years, George served as her caregiver. Since his mother's passing, George has dedicated himself to providing hope, resources, and encouragement for people with Parkinson's, their caregivers, and families, so they'll know they are not alone in their struggles with this disease. I'd now like to welcome Dr. George Ackerman. Welcome, George.
Thank you for your time and your wife and your whole family. It really means the world to me and our family to have the opportunity to speak today. So thank you.
Oh, you are welcome. The stuff you're doing is amazing for Parkinson's awareness, and you're a tireless worker. And just the time that we spoke last month, the passion for what you're doing just sort of oozes out of you. You're alive for what you're doing, both for your mom's memory, but also for those people who have Parkinson's or are caregivers or people who are just curious as to how they can help and learn more about that disease. So thank you so much.
Yeah, I feel like there's a fire in my, I'd say belly or heart just driving me to keep doing it almost so much. My own health is suffering some days, but I just don't want anyone to ever have to go through what my mother and our family has. And till we find a cure, I just keep fighting. And since we've spoken, a lot of incredible things have happened. And I didn't plan any of this. I didn't ask for it, but sometimes you have to step up and speak for those who might not have a voice or those who are struggling and can't do what I can. And until, again, we find the cure, I'll be their voice and I'll fight right beside them.
Well, having a warrior like you out there is so important. I have two friends who have Parkinson's, and I know what they've been going through to some degree, but I think there's probably a lot of people who know of somebody with Parkinson's, and some very high profile people, of course, like Michael J. Fox, who I know you have met. But before we get into the work that you've done for your website for advocating for Parkinson's, let's talk a little bit about Dr. George Ackerman. Tell us about your background. And you really have a background that's filled with really advocating for people who are in need. Tell us about you.
I was born in Brooklyn, New York, now in Florida. Always had a passion to help others. I just specifically victims of crime. I think it's a lot I've seen growing up in New York was not easy and a lot of crime. And I mean, back then was the days of the mafia, which aren't the big issue, I think, in society today, which is odd. But you could see the changing in times and crime. But it kind of impacted me, and I always wanted to see if I could again help the voiceless. So I was able to go into the field that I really dreamed of, which was the law. So I became an attorney in Florida and Washington, D.C. I worked as an intern at the prosecutor's office and got to be right hands-on inside the world of the criminal justice field in the legal setting. I did find, though, because of so many cases, you didn't have time as a prosecutor to help the victims. You had to just move to the next case. So, some would say odd. I decided to go from the suit, wearing a suit into the field with a badge and a gun. And I became a police officer. I went to the Miami, Florida Police Academy, which was definitely not easy. I was a lawyer or a new lawyer and a newbie, and they didn't like either of those. So that brought a lot of challenges, but also built me to be able to have tougher skin. I also learned how important it is to look at both sides, the defense and the prosecutor. When I was in the prosecutor's office, I was really pro prosecutor, but I liked the policing because it opened my eyes that there are individuals who deserve their say in court, and many, unfortunately, errors occur. So that was interesting. But then again, in the field, I noticed you have to hand a brochure to victims and move to the next call. So when I found myself kind of baffled in a way, like I love these fields, but they weren't where I wanted to be. So fell into teaching and fell in love with education, became a professor, currently teach around the world, really online, which is great because I have the time. I don't have time. It's just good time management, but I just am able to still juggle things somehow. And I fell into my dissertation and my PhD, and that was like if I had it all over, I probably would have just done that because I specifically did my work and research on aiding African American mothers who lost their loved ones due to murder in West Palm Beach. And I was able to sit knee to knee with mothers and hear their journeys and their stories, actually similar to the world of Parkinson's in a way. But so I was able to do that work, and I still definitely donate. I still spend time. I never forget. But a lot of time, the criminal justice system forgets the family members, not just the victim, because they're no longer with us, unfortunately, but also the families, and they become secondary victims. And before we move forward, that's what my background, but it shifted to caregiving. And I kind of correlate Parkinson's community specifically with our political world and government, because until last December, when they finally passed the first ever, which shocks me that there's never been any legislation for Parkinson's disease victims, not victim, but I feel sometimes they are victim, but people battling the families till December 2023. So we're speaking now. We're actually going through a period of history, literally for your show, which is history named after it. And I can't tell you a better time because now you and your viewers, if you're in the United States, can please urge you to reach out to your United States Senator. Very simple. It's not anymore House, which is much more complicated because some people can't figure out who they're represented. But now you can reach out to your senator. I actually interviewed United States Senator Rick Scott a month ago, and we have him signed on, and Senator Rubio signed on to support the bill. So if this passes in the next year or two, it'll go to the president, become law, and honestly, it'll be amazing. But we still have a lot of work to do, even if it is, passed.
I'm so happy to hear that there's some advances made, even though it took a long time to come along, didn't it?
And they actually mirrored a lot of the bill, the national plan from Alzheimer's, because unfortunately more people possibly are affected by Alzheimer's, but they have advanced their movement much more, but we shouldn't be forgotten. I always say my mother still matters and my voice still counts, and we need to end Parkinson's disease. Until we do, some days I don't sleep, very tireless, not because I want to, just because I have become family with so many people. So out of the darkness, when we get to, there's a lot of light. Meeting people like you, your wife, your listeners, all those people still battling, it just drives me to keep pushing forward.
Well, it's one of the things, everybody's got a story to tell, and that's what we're focused on. And your story is just one of those very important stories to get out there, because the more people that know about it, you mentioned contacting your senator, but also reaching out to families that we may know who are going through Parkinson's. How can we be of help? How can we get involved? How can we donate to organizations that actually are funding research and things along those lines?
Yeah, my family just took a trip just for one day or two. I just couldn't miss it. But the Unity Walk was the second annual. It's the 30th overall, but the second annual through the Michael J. Fox Foundation. It was at Central Park just Saturday morning, and it was just life changing. I've been sick since I came home, but I would do it again tomorrow. I was just in shock of the people there, the community. They raised $2 million in one event for Parkinson's awareness. It's called the Unity Walk. Feel free, anyone there listening. It's once a year in April. April's Parkinson's Awareness Month. I had a little list of 10 people who I've gotten to know in the last year around the world, and I knew they'd be there. So I got photos with them all, and we hugged, and we cried, and we just, we were all there for one purpose, to support each other, to end the disease. But I was shocked to find out while I was standing there, all of a sudden, Katie Couric showed up, and I got a picture with her. I got to talk to her. I told her about my mother's journey for a minute. And then out of nowhere, Michael J. Fox appeared. It was like a movie. And he came up and spoke, and I didn't get to shake his hand again because he was kind of whisked away with the security, but I got to hear him again. I met him a month or two ago, one-on-one, which was amazing. But to hear him speak, and he's struggling, but that's why, we're here, because we don't want him to struggle anymore, or anyone out there fighting this disease. I also met Muhammad Ali's daughter, May, who's become a close friend. Fiona Davis is a best-selling novel writer and around the world, who I got to hug because we've been friendly for a year. But it's just shocking knowing these people, but never seeing them. And then finally getting the opportunity to give them a hug. It just drives me again. These are the things, the moments and the memories that you have to keep in your head, even through your own tough times, that make you kind of re-energize and keep fighting.
Yeah, it's like a breath of fresh air for you when you meet other people who are also advocating for awareness. So let's talk about the person who started all this, the person who connected you, sadly, with the disease, and that's your mom, Sharon. From what I've read about your mom, from what I've heard from you, from speaking with you before and on other interviews you've done, she sounded like an amazing lady. And what can you tell us about Sharon?
Yeah, I mean, my mother was my best friend. She passed on 1/1/2020. I'm really grateful. When we spoke, I didn't have a book. It was out there. I never thought it would be published, but now it's out. And the reason I'm excited, it really gives me an opportunity to tell people more about her. There's a whole chapter about her life. She didn't have much growing up, literally. They had nothing almost. And they struggled like most Americans back in the 50s, 60s. And she had an incredible father, mother, sister named Ellen, who's my aunt and still close. I'll see her this weekend. Her father passed very young. She was only, I think, like even 14 due to the war. I mean, he came back, but it was so, what happened, just life after fighting and serving the country. And so she really didn't have a father figure. My grandmother, Pauline, was a hero of mine too. Thankfully, I got a lot of time in my life. She helped raise me. They were just an incredible mother and grandmother team. My mother was incredible. She actually had a degree, taught little kids school, and she was part-time, but did her master's degree. And at some point, she decided she was going to sacrifice her whole life and career to raise me and my brother and allow my father to go to medical school. So that kind of took us out of the kind of, tough times. And then, unfortunately, they got divorced, and she really raised me, in my opinion, alone many years. And we were saved in a way. No offense to New Yorkers, but she took me out of New York after seeing a lot of crime, having issues myself, and we went to Florida, and that's where everything kind of changed. We were with my grandmother who had moved here, my aunt, my cousin, and unfortunately, we only had a year with my grandmother. She passed at 79, but at least I feel like today, all of my mother's sacrifices, if it wasn't for her, I wouldn't be the man I am today. I wouldn't have the success I have today. She was someone who I spoke to 24/7. I'm 6'2", 200 pounds in policing. I always joke I'm a mama's boy. I'm proud of it. I need one of those shirts someday to get one. I should probably get one. But she was very strong, independent, lived alone, had her friends, her love, shopping and, taking care of herself. She loved to walk, but those last 4 years, she went from walking a few miles to a cane for 2 years, a walker for a year, and then wheelchair and then bedbound literally out of nowhere. And I'm still kind of in shock of what the heck happened. It's a tough journey, but one that has to be remembered, because I think many can learn from what we did. Maybe not our journey, because, like I said, I have a PhD. Not a medical doctor. I'm a professor in criminal justice. So anything I discuss today has to be from our journey and our experiences. So the odd thing with Parkinson's is that we don't have a cure, because everybody is so different. So my mother had late onset dementia on top of Parkinson's, which that was another challenge on top of another challenge, but that doesn't mean everyone will have dementia at all. So it's just very tricky disease, because you can't judge one person. It's everyone has such specific issues, but there are some generalities, obviously, like the tremors, which again we can try and get into if we have time, or I recommend to read the book.
Man, you really have a heart for this. This is why we're talking with you. I just wanted to talk about your mom as far as When did she first find out that there was something wrong? Was there a first indication, or when she was diagnosed actually with Parkinson's?
Yeah, we believe that it's hard because I feel like she had it, and I don't know if she realized how what it was or how quickly it would affect her. And I also know for a fact she didn't want to burden the family, so she might not have told me as much as she should have. So, or I also think back, maybe she, again, wasn't aware. I don't know if she was diagnosed early enough. So many questions still. There's no regrets because we couldn't do anymore. We tried everything, but she did have it about 15 years, I believe. And she had towards the sixth year, she could still live alone. She was able to shop, see her friends, do her hair and things, and enjoy life. She walked, but then all of a sudden her left arm was getting so stiff that she couldn't cut her food. I noticed when we were eating out. It concerned me, but I was like honestly caught, lost, confused, and didn't really know what to do. So I'm not gonna lie. I think I might have ignored a little because she was still fine. We were told it's not gonna take her life, so it would sting to have the arm, but that's people have stings. So that was that. All of a sudden, we tried several different areas, and finally, my father took my mother. They're divorced, but he was a medical doctor, so he was trying to help too. They took her to a special university, and then I don't know what happened, but that night was the night I took over her whole life when I was called at 4 a.m. to rush over to her house, and I didn't know what was going on, what to expect, why am I being. My father said from New York, he called, George, get over to your mother's house 4 a.m. And I'm used to, late calls with law enforcement, not this. And as a reserve, so I rush over and I see my mother from far away moving like things, furniture. And I'm like, Mom, what is wrong? And she's like, she thought she was in fear of her life, and she thought Nazis were inside her home and they were going to harm her. And I didn't know what to do. So I rushed her to the hospital. I found that she had like a UTI, which I don't even know what that is back then. And also the medicines caused major issues in the brain. And they said she could have died. So in a way, we saved her life, but unfortunately, in the other way, that was when her downturn began, the spiral, and all hell, if you could say a word, started for our whole family, mainly for my mother. And that wasn't even the worst of that night. When I brought her to the hospital and she was, okay, or whatever you want to say, medically okay, I went back to pick up a few of her clothing, and surrounding her whole bedroom, which I never went in her bedroom a lot because, she gave her privacy, and in her bedroom was surrounded by post-it notes. They had names of people and animals that were in our lives in the past, and she wrote if they were alive or not, because that was when I realized she had late onset dementia on top of the Parkinson's. And it was really a horror movie nightmare that I'll never forget. And even though there's so much good, sometimes that hides all the good moments and is very tough. And just quickly, Parkinson's brings stiffness, rigidity. Some people, unfortunately, it's almost like you want to move and you're stuck. Like literally, that's what it's like. And that's a horrible feeling. It cripples people by causing them to not be able to be employed anymore. A lot of people don't want to talk about it or even tell anyone. And it just, my mother went from a healthy weight, let's say like 160 pounds. She was almost 5'4", all the way down to like almost no weight at all when she passed. She also had dystonia, which is the curling of the toes. There's something called bradykinesia, which again is stiffness of the gait. And she had internal tremors. Some individuals have external, like Mr. Michael J. Fox, where it's kind of uncontrollable shaking. And it just, again, it's crippling. But then when you add the dementia, that's a whole different world, because that's where the hallucinations and delusions come in, and you don't know what's reality and what's not. And I didn't either. Yeah, my mother was the kindest, most gentle and friendly person, no anger or violence her whole life. One night I remember getting a call from an aide with her, and my mother took this little glass light bulb and threw it against the wall, and it shattered. And I was shocked because that's not my mother. And when the disease, it kind of took over, and she was just so frustrated because she didn't have hope. We didn't know what to tell her. Doctors couldn't say anything. So she looked at me and said, "Am I going to be here for Brooke's wedding day?" That was my daughter. She was 7 at the time. She's now 11. And I looked at her and I couldn't tell her an answer. And, that was heartbreaking. So you can see the disease doesn't define a person, but it can change them. And for my mother, unfortunately, it changed her for the worse during those moments of struggle.
and it changed you. And that's where there's a couple of parallels with my situation because, like your mom, my mom, I was very close with my mom. She had Alzheimer's for approximately 10 years. There's some thought that there were signs of it even earlier, but she probably for, like your mom, for probably about 6 years or so, we noticed a lot of forgetfulness. There were definitely changes where she wasn't exactly the same mom, but she lived in a place where she had a lot of friends and community. Some of them covered for her. She was able to go places, do things. And even though there were definitely signs that she wasn't exactly the same as she was, she functioned and seemed pretty happy. And then all of a sudden, like you mentioned with your mom, with the dragging the stuff out and, thinking that that Nazis were attacking her, my mom ran into a meeting at this senior's place that she lived. She ran into a meeting and was looking for her father, who was, had been dead for years. And it was at that point we knew we're taking a big step down. And then for the next 4 years, she was in a skilled nursing setting. So our relationship with my mom changed. Our level of support and care that we were going to be giving changed. It's like we went from Alzheimer's 101 to AP Alzheimer's as caregivers. Our lives had to change to adapt to the disease changing. And it sounds a little bit, when you said about your mom, I could relate to that because we knew we were going to have to do things differently now. So when you became caregiver, I know it takes a huge amount of energy, and you're a busy guy. You got your own kids, your wife, your family. You're you're certainly not an underachiever. George, you've accomplished so many things, but you have an active life. You got stuff going on, but you really threw yourself into caregiving. How was that as far as trying to balance your life?
Well, sorry to hear about your loss, and we send our love to you and your family. I wish we had a cure for every disease. So I
Yeah.
might have just unfortunately been affected by Parkinson's and dementia, but I have a close friend who we do a little blog every month called Tackling Tough Topics. Her name is Betsy. She has a radio station, or she's a host, and she lost her husband literally due to Alzheimer's the same day as my mother passed due to Parkinson. Betsy Warren, and I don't know how we met, but we became like family since. So it brings us together, but change, it's like a hateful way to meet, but a beautiful way too. So I'm glad again we've brought together, and your wife too. So caregiving. I almost think we should have a thing pop up on the screen saying caregiving 101, but there is no such thing because you could take classes, but there's no way you could be prepared. I wanted my mother, number one, to not fall. So we had to hire staff literally. We promised her too, we would never put her in a home. We never did, which there were days in my mind I was telling my wife we have to go look for homes. I couldn't, it wasn't my mother's, but I couldn't take it. I didn't understand what was going on, how to fix it. And every time I did something good, we thought I was like a hammer and a nail. I kept getting hit down, down. So, my dream was number one, not to have her fall, because I knew if she fell on top of the other things, we would be done. And I don't want her to be bedbound. So that was cost us 12,000 a month for many, many months, which was not easy. Thankfully, we were able to keep her home. Then the other thing is I just wanted her to feel comfortable. So I knew for some reason her brain might not have always been okay due to the disease, because Parkinson's is the fastest growing neurological disease around the world. But 1 million infected in the US and 10 million around the world. But some reason when she saw me, my wife, and the kids, she was, I don't want to say okay, but she felt safe. And that was, it meant the world to me. So we sold our home in Boca and we brought her closer to us. Beautiful home, like literally built it from scratch. It was like a son's dream. She never really got to enjoy it because the
Um,
first day she walked in, I have a beautiful picture of just her face lit up, and she got to be there. But that was when the last year was the worst. So I always dreamt she'd have 10 years to sit on the man-made lake and just relax, and because she had a rough life and just wanted her to enjoy 10 years, and it never happened. But and then after it got worse, we decided to sell that house. We bought a bigger house to move her in, and she didn't make it. So just like the backyard, there's days, even when I came in today to see you, I walk by that room and, my mother's not here. So sometimes it's not easy to even talk about. Also, the cover of the book is not easy to even look at sometimes because that was my wedding, and it was my favorite memory. I always say Parkinson's disease doesn't define you, but it'll never ever take the good memories away. And that's the one that stands out. We were dancing at my wedding. It was my favorite day. I met my wife. We're finally making it official. Kids weren't there yet, so they didn't, we didn't have that memory yet. But it was my mother and me laughed, we joked, we talked, and Parkinson doesn't exist in that song. Barry Manilow was "I Am Your Child." She loved Barry Manilow. I couldn't stand him for decades, and then all of a sudden I fell in love with him, and I actually got to bring my mother to see Barry Manilow in Florida, and that was like the cool. We were all dancing. This is before she got sick, but anytime I hear that music, I wish he was better at social media because she also had a dream. She loved Kenny G, the famous saxophonist, and now because of technology, like like we have a podcast. I never thought we would, but technology. I reached out, and I was able somehow to get Kenny G, and who's an incredible human being. He played a song and wrote a message or set a message on a video. It's on togetherforsharon.com in memory of my mother, and she would have just melted if she had known. I wish she could have seen that. I met Mr. Michael J. Fox 2 times now. I met Katie Kerr. Just, I don't know if it's getting bigger because of the disease and hitting more people, or some of our work is finally coming around. Again, I don't want to get off topic, but I remember we started together for Sharon.com in my mother's memory. I thought we'd have like 4 people, and I would have been fine with that. Look at it. But I'm proud to say, as of today, we've had almost 40,000 people view the website. And, again, I don't do it for any of that, but it just means a lot that it's, people know there's a resource out there completely free to make sure that you're never alone in this fight.
Oh, that is great. Yeah, that brings me to what I was going to ask you next. So when you lost your mom, I think you said January 1st of 2020. So that's right before the COVID situation. So tell us about the Together for Sharon website. How did that first come into your mind as something that you and your family wanted to do?
At first, my mother passed unexpectedly because, like I said, we were told she wouldn't from Parkinson's. But we had the funeral, and I didn't think people would show. I didn't know what to expect. It was so like out of nowhere. So we had a huge crowd, like 60 people. I was shocked. With a lot of my friends. And I told my wife I want to give everyone something to remember my mother. I know you don't need to, but I'm the kind of person that likes to. So we created this little band. It's just a purple band. It says "In Memory of My Mother." It says "togetherforsharon.com" and Parkinson's disease awareness. So, I thought I'd give a few of these out, and that would be the end of that. And then we had the site, and again, I never thought it would be more than just to tell a story, and that was it. Well, at the time, my brother, now he's my brother-in-law, but at the time he was just dating my sister-in-law, and he put one on. And for some reason, when he left, he put it on. He took a picture, and he wasn't in it. It's just his hand and arm in the background, and it just like clicked in my head. I'm a lawyer and a cop. People like to do stuff on social media, but they don't really particularly want their face on because of privacy. So I started putting the band on. I would go around town, like to the beach. I went to the basketball court. I was a big player. I went to Disney World, and I just put this. It was to show my mother's still with me. And all of a sudden, it just kind of caught on. People started asking for them, and we paid fully for everything. Probably spent a few $1,000s, but we started sending them around, like to Spain, to France, all over from the U.S. And I was getting people online on social media all across the world posting their photo with the band. It became viral. Even Willie Geist, the famous, I think he's on NBC host, his wife, I think his father has Parkinson's. His wife somehow saw it, and she talked about it when she was on her run and held it up or put on her picture, and it just went out of control. We had to stop it because it was costing so much, but it was incredible to see the support. And I mean, I have it still on the website, but people were, I mean, it was not like people at Yankee Stadium and people at golf stadiums and sports, swimming, all different things were all just showing my mother's memory. And man, I wish I could keep doing it, but I do pass them out for free when we do live events, but it got overwhelming, as you probably would know. So that was the start of the actual band. And then that propelled the website more. And I realized 2 years ago that it wasn't just about my mother and I anymore. It was about everybody and her family in this fight. I learned about a group organization called World Parkinson Congress, and I didn't even know it existed, which is part of the problem with a lot of these things. You just don't know they're out there. So I wanted a website where everything would be in one place, resources. We have a blog now. I don't know how. We have our own podcast. We put all our podcasts, like this one today, will be on there. It's almost become like a TV station, like a life of its own, and it just means the world to me. And now My mother's really remembered everywhere, and it's still growing. And some days I want to take a break and I sit back at work, and then all of a sudden something incredible, like I told you, all of a sudden I've been trying this for a whole year. It's online, but it's actually a proclamation from the governor, Ron DeSantis. You know, whether you like him or not doesn't matter. The point of having a governor, like of any state, and it's an acknowledgement that April of 2024 is now going to be declared Parkinson's Disease Awareness Month in Florida, memory of my mother. And this was like something that was hard to get. And that's where we're going. I interviewed a United States Senator, Rick Scott, a few weeks ago. I'm interviewing experts in the world for Parkinson things. The policy director of Ted Thompson, vice president of Michael J. Fox Foundation, came on the show. People that I just never would have met or even had an opportunity to. And it's just kind of incredible to sit back someday. And then this Saturday night, we're actually going to have a book release party, and that's going to be my close family and friends, and we'll videotape it. But I didn't know I'm going to ever have it. You know, it's just beyond me, and it means the world to me. So that's why we keep doing it.
So the website started off as just more of a memorial for your mom. Then it started to get propelled by the wristbands to some degree. And then people started to jump in there. So you start seeing that people want to learn more. People want to get connected, things like that. And then you've got a proclamation from the governor. Now, the name of your book is In Memory of My Mother, Sharon, A Son's Journey from Parkinson's Disease Caregiver to Advocate. So when we post this episode in our show notes, we're going to give your website and any other contact information so people can find out more about that book. But one of the other things I noticed when looking at your website, which is fantastic, there's so many resources there. There are videos, interviews you've done. There's a blog, there's articles. There's also the story about your mom and yourself. And then there's ways that you can donate. You mentioned that you don't accept any donations at all, but you do point people toward really great organizations that do. The American Parkinson's Disease Association, the Michael J. Fox Foundation, Drive Toward a Cure, Power Over Parkinson's. There are different websites that you can go to and contribute and find out more about how you can help those organizations help people with Parkinson's. So I love that. You're like a conduit between the people who want to help and ways that they can help. But you are also, I said it before, and this impacts me, is that you want people to know that they're not alone, either as a caregiver or a person who's suffering from Parkinson's, that there are people, there's a community out there. And you could have walked away after losing your mom, your cherished mom. You could have walked away and said, I don't even want to hear the word of that disease anymore. We're just going to move on and remember mom for the way she was, and that's it. But you chose to go in another direction. And part of it was just your love for your mom and advocating for other people. But part of it is that you started to see the need for what you're doing come through your website. All of a sudden, there's people who want this, who need this. And, you're kept awake nights thinking about those people. And you got to be really commended. And I do hope, I just have to say this to you, though. I'm going to sound like your father or something here, but I want to say is that there's an old saying that I've heard before, like on an airline, if there's a problem with the plane and the oxygen masks come down and you've got a small child or somebody next to you who needs help, you got to put your own mask on first so that you can continue to work at what you're doing. I'm thankful for what you are doing now. It sounds like you've had some amazing things happening lately that show you that, hey, this is going places. This is important. I know your long-term goal is to find a cure for Parkinson's, but do you have some short-term goals that you're aiming at? Are there other things that you have in mind to expand people's awareness of Parkinson's?
We just started on the website 3 little areas. One is called In Memory, where I'm starting to concentrate and bring back people loved ones who lost somebody due to Parkinson's. So I want to share their journey. I'm proud of the 600 interviews I've done throughout the world, from France, Spain, Italy, England, Nova Scotia. I mean, Iceland. Parkinson doesn't discriminate, but they're all 600 or up there, completely free. So people, I had a gentleman write me, I was on your site for 10 hours. I told him, don't be on there for 10 hours, but he felt amazing because he felt alone and now he knew he wasn't. So those are something. Also, I started PWP on the website. It's called People with Parkinson, where I list people, literally artists who have Parkinson's, a person who sells shirts. It's their direct link. My dream was to help them gain fundraising directly. So we take nothing, we have nothing to do with it. But like, there's an example of a friend I've become family with named Adam, and he's in the UK. He has a GoFundMe, and I just added 2 sentences about Adam, his family. You click on it, it goes right to his thing. We have nothing to do with it. I just feel that again, there's some incredible organization, but sometimes it doesn't get to the little guy or girl, and I want them to also. I don't think anyone should have to pay for medicines for Parkinson's. It's not their fault they have it, and it can get extremely expensive. So they can't even eat dinner at some point, some people, because they're spending the money on the medicines, which is horrible. So those are 2 areas I'm really proud of. And we just started a new area, which is really cool. It's books and it's resources. So I listed about 20 or 30. It's growing, of people who have Parkinson's or advocates, and I have their books on the website. Click the link. You can buy all the books. None of it goes to us. Even the donation links, those are incredible organizations who created the link in memory of my mother, but none of it comes to us. We don't. I had a gentleman, I was at a live event once for the Parkinson's Foundation. He said, take this $5, donate it. I'm like, I don't accept money. I literally ran home after the event, donated in his name, and sent him a receipt. Because, I'm talking about this too in a future book. I don't want to become a foundation. Maybe when I'm older, hopefully we'll have no Parkinson's. I don't have to. But I really want to support other people and other foundations. I'm a lawyer. Believe me, I've started foundations. I know how to do it, but I didn't want to make this about money and start getting into taxes and this and all the paperwork. And I just like to be kind of free to do things and have decisions and make things and help people. And that was a big reason it's not a foundation. And I have to make it clear, you didn't mistake it. A lot of time I'm on shows and they do. We're not a foundation. We're not an organization. I'm just one son, one person who lost his, it's hard to say, but lost his best friend due to this disease. Again, I don't want anything from anyone except to know that you're not alone. And some things in the future I didn't plan, but it's like when I speak to you or anyone I meet, there's like a thing, like a newspaper rolling in my head, thinking of ideas. And we already finished a follow-up book to this. I won't release it for a while because I'm working on other things, but I want to release 4 sets of the interviews. So that's next. We're already working on one. So it'll really be a book of all the interviews of all those people fighting. I'm also working on the children's book, but I'm trying to figure out I think I want it at the point of view of a father who's trying to explain to his children, 3 children, about their grandmother, because I still struggle today to explain it. And then finally, I'm also, this one's going to be groundbreaking if it comes out. It's a lot of research, more based, which takes time, but I want to do a book on policing and Parkinson's. Actually, finally, I shouldn't talk about it because I don't want it to start adding, and then there goes the whole book premise. But I've taught at the academy in Florida. I have the actual paper finally. It came a week ago. And there's only 2 minutes, sadly, in the whole academy for training for police that talks about, either they list dementia and Alzheimer's, but guess what? There's not one word of the word Parkinson's. And I want to possibly work with the Michael J. Fox Foundation and their incredible policy team to start legislation around the United States for every single police department to add the word Parkinson's into every training manual in every academy in the United States. So that might be a game changer. And it's something that before my time is up, I hope I could get out. Again, it's a small population for Parkinson, but my book really is for anyone out there, not just people with dementia and Parkinson, but to try to help them, guide them, take them inside of the world of, any disease, but also to come out on the top in the end. The future is bright for advocacy. It's sad because I don't have my mother, but she still lives on through all the work that we all do. And again, having the time today with you and your family means the world to me and my family. So I'm grateful.
Oh, thank you, George. Thank you. both of us can sit here and remember our moms for the way they were, but how they left us is also part of their story. It doesn't mean we don't continue to grieve the later years of their lives that we would have pictured with the grandkids and going places and seats at the table. But if we can use, like you do with your gifts, to tell their story and to help others feel connected and point them in the right direction and how they might help with this disease, is the best use of your time. And it really honors your mother. It really honors her, which leads me to my last question for you. If your mother was sitting listening to us talk right now and she saw your web page, togetherforsharon.com, and she was looking through it, what would she say? What would be her thoughts right now?
It's funny you say that because my mother was funny. She would say, George, don't waste your time with all this. Go spend time with your family. And my family, my wife's incredible support of the whole chapter. My wife actually wrote, and I speak about her. If I wouldn't have been through that caregiving or advocacy, if it wasn't for my wife, who is not today my best friend. She even does a show with me. It's more rare because she's busy, so we do once a month called the Together for Sharon podcast, and then I do my own. Today I'm actually interviewing one of the world renowned experts, Dr. Michael Oken, from the University of Florida today, so that'll be coming soon. But that's called Q&A with Sharon's son George. But she would probably want me to just kind of stop. She was more, didn't want to burden me, and this is definitely a lot of time and effort. And like I said, this morning I woke up, I have finals now, I'm trying to concentrate on work, and all of a sudden the governor's email comes, and it's like I have to drop everything because that's pretty incredible. I mean, I've had the city, Boca Raton wrote proclamation. I got to the county where I gave a speech about Parkinson's. It's on the website. And there's nowhere else to go but the state. I got that. And we even have the senator. And the only one left now is the president. So if anyone's out there knows the president, feel free to ask him if he'll speak to me. That would be a dream, but it's probably a little tougher to do that. But that's just do it for awareness. Everybody has a voice. I just want to fight for those who might not. And since, again, we're wrapping up, I have a little message for you, your family, and your listeners. But we love you. We support you. We care a lot about you, and you're never alone. I will advocate for you. And together our voices are so much stronger. And I'm just getting started. And the reason I say that, obviously, I'm not, but every time I meet a person like you and your wife who inspire me and your audience, every time I go to a live event and see Mr. Michael J. Fox or meet some incredible people out there still battling, people diagnosed, the family members. If I meet someone who lost a loved one, kind of rejuvenates me in a way or re-energizes me to realize I have to keep this fight up. And until we find a cure and end Parkinson's, you'll see me fighting right by your side. So again, I'm so grateful for your time. And I don't think this is about a podcast or a show. I think it's a conversation that has to continue. I'm always going to be here and I'm always going to be fighting. So again, thank you, your wife, your family, and your audience for the time today. It just changes my life and makes me want to keep fighting. So even if it sacrifices my health, it's okay.
Amen. And a big thank you to Sharon's son, George.
Thanks.
And I really urge anybody listening to check out the togetherforsharon.com website and also to look at picking up a copy of George's recently released book, In Memory of My Mother, Sharon, A Son's Journey from Parkinson's Disease Caregiver to Advocate. Great stuff. Keep doing what you're doing, but don't forget to rest once in a while, okay?
Thank you.
And God bless. And I hope you have a great day, George. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you.
Thank you. And to your viewers, again, we send our love and support. We didn't have the time I wanted to about the book, but, I think if you do pick it up, you'll see some incredible inside information. You'll learn some tips to actually go through a lot of advocacy and how you can become an advocate yourself. So it's not just about me. I feel like, again, we're family. And if I had 100 million of you and me together, we would have already ended this disease. So got to take it one day at a time, but I think we can do it if we all work together. So thank you.
You're absolutely welcome. And I hope you have a really, really good spring and summer, and that even more great things happen as you get the word out about Parkinson's.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks again. Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Your History, Your Story. You can connect with us on Facebook and YouTube at Your History, Your Story, or on Instagram and Twitter at YHYS Podcast. We'd love to hear from you if you have any questions, comments, or a story to tell. Be well and God bless.